Hi, hello, welcome. If you are new here, I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. Today's case that we're going to be talking about is a gut punch. There is quite literally no other way to put it. It's one that I cannot stop thinking about, and I just felt compelled to share to bring awareness, even though it involves a 12-year-old girl. If you are a regular Sippin, you know that I really struggle with cases that involve children. I don't cover them much, but today we are making an exception. Today we are talking about the disappearance of Celina Mays, who was a 12-year-old child who went missing in Willingboro, New Jersey, who was pregnant at the time. 12-year-old pregnant child. Just based off that, I'm sure that you know today's case is going to be heavy. So let's take a minute, ground yourselves, do what you need to do. While you do that, I have a quick message for you. Thank you to our sponsor today, Trade Coffee. Trade helps you make better coffee at home. It's a coffee subscription service that allows you to experience curated for you coffee delivered right to your door, when and how you want it. They have hundreds of different preferences of coffee, flavors, profiles that you can choose from to really find that exact profile, flavor note that is right for you to just bring out the coffee lover in you. The nice thing also about Trade is that they source coffee all across the country. They work with over 55 roasters, so you can really just have a wide variety of enjoying the creme de la creme of products in your own home. Now I feel like with Trade, where I found my niche of coffee, I feel like I'm starting to lean into that more, and I'm feeling really bougie about it. I personally found out that I love a extra dark roast. They also roast your coffee to order and then deliver it exactly when you're going to need it. There are multiple ways that you can experience coffee with Trade. You can sign up for a subscription, or you can try one of their starter packs. Go to drinktrade.com to sign up and save $15 on select plans and to get your first bag of coffee free when you use the link in my description. Thank you again so much, Trade Coffee, for the delicious coffee and for supporting my channel and sponsoring today's video. This case is very convoluted, complex, and not just because of the fact that we are talking about a 12-year-old pregnant child, but there are many layers to this case that go much deeper, including rumors of the family having lots of secrets, being in a cult, expressing cult-like activities, and this most likely be the reason why this case has not been solved in 28 years. I want to give a huge shout out before I get started to Jaden Harlow from Missing Found podcast. The work on this case was incredible. It helped me so much fill in missing gaps that I was having. Celina Jeanette Mays was born on May 28th, 1984 in Miami, Florida to her parents Cresonzo, who went by CJ Mays, which is how I will address CJ for obvious reasons because it's me and I can't, I struggle on the daily. And her mom, Lynn Vital. Celina was born into not an ideal home life. Her father, CJ, struggled with drugs and alcohol addiction. There is also a domestic violence record there, and her mother, Lynn, also had a drug addiction, and there was allegedly domestic violence claims between the two of them as well. In 1986, when Celina was only 2 years old, the family relocated to Palmyra, New Jersey for a fresh start. Ultimately, it didn't end up fixing problems within the marriage. Celina's parents ended up separating and going through quite a tumultuous custody battle. But after the separation, things improved for Lynn in her life. She got sober, she got a job as a janitor at a school, and when Celina was enrolled in school, she's said to have excelled and made friends quite easily. Now, after the separation for CJ, he ended up going to move with relatives about 9 miles away in Willingboro, New Jersey. He became a radical Christian under his sister's church. His sister was Reverend Sarita Smith, and the church that she was running was called Gospel of Christ Ministry. It said that CJ dedicated pretty much his entire life to this church. He lived and breathed the church, was even employed within the church as an accountant. Now, during this time, it's alleged that Lynn did not allow CJ access to Celina. There isn't really clarification on what her reasoning was behind that. CJ claims that it was because of her family not being accepting to the fact that he was Black. Other people have alleged it is because of how invested and consumed he was within the church. Sadly, only 8 years after moving to New Jersey, Lynn died of an aneurysm in 1994. So at this time, Celina is only 10 years old, which I cannot even imagine what that in itself would have been like, especially at that age when you're in such a pivotal time in your life. You have questions about the changes that are happening in your body. Your emotions are all over the place. Your friendships are usually very dodgy at this point. And generally, the person that you confide and look for comfort in is your mom, especially if you're a young 10-year-old girl. Immediately after Lynn's passing, Celina was sent to live with her relatives on her mother's side. And then she was thrown into this really nasty court battle between her mother's family and her father, who was fighting for custody of her. At the end of it all, CJ ended up winning and gaining full custody of Celina. He had told the courts that he found religion, he became sober, he had even gotten married and had a child. So Celina ends up moving into this communal family home that CJ and several other of his family members were living in. It included his new wife, Yvette, Celina's now half-sister, Nori, who was 4, as well as her father's sister, so her aunt, Sarita, the leader of the church, Sarita's husband, 5 of their children, grandchildren, and even members of the church who were not blood related, but a part of this congregation. The home that they lived in is described as a modest ranch-style home. It is in a middle-class community in Willingboro, New Jersey. And according to Jaden Harlow, who I believe was able to pull up blueprints or look at the house, at the time, this house was a 2-story house. It had 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a primary bedroom on the main level, and then 3 bedrooms on the upper level. Now, with CJ, his family, and then his sister's family, plus the members of the church, it said that there was between 12 to 15 people that were occupying this home in December 1996. Now, we just need to take a second to think about the fact that this, in general, probably would have been a huge transition in itself for Celina, who has already lost her mom. And now she has this even bigger adjustment when she is put in this really busy, full, hectic family home. And then her father makes the decision to pull her from public schooling and transition her to homeschooling, which was done within the church. It's alleged that her teachings primarily were focused around the church and religion, and that she was limited to any form of social interactions, especially with people who were not members of this gospel Christ ministry church. This church is described as a Pentecostal church. It is located in Mount Holly, New Jersey, and then obviously we know led by Reverend Sarita Smith. She had a congregation of about 50 to 60 members that were either directly related to Sarita and CJ or close family friends that ended up bringing their family in. So very, very tight-knit, and everybody was extremely devoted and focused on just interacting with themselves and each other. We talk a lot about this when we talk about these types of groups that are, when they're described as this, in my opinion, very cult-like, and the members become fully immersed in the congregation. They give their entire life to these organizations. Most of them work there. If they don't work there, they are definitely a huge part of supporting the church financially. And there generally are guidelines, whether these leaders want to admit it or not, that it is strictly, encouraged, not enforced always, but that it's very strongly encouraged to only socialize with members within. And I repeat this because it's important. It's going to come into play later on. And these members also were homeschooling their children there. Many of them were, like Celina. Most of them even lived in homes that were within like the church land and had dozens of the members sharing one home. It's been alleged by past members that not only did Reverend Sarita run this congregation, she was also the leader of her family and everything that went on in the lives of her family, members of her congregation, inside and outside of the church, she had to have knowledge of and basically provide her approval and consent for. And there was no pass for Celina. The fact that she was already going through something extremely traumatic and making adjustments in her life, going from losing her mom and just being her and her mom now thrown into this. She was being raised very strict under this house. It was you go from home to the church, which is basically on the same grounds, to be homeschooled at the church and then back home. So tight wraps on Celina. Pretty much everybody knows where Celina is at all times. So it doesn't seem like there's really an opportunity where she would have ever been able to leave and go somewhere at the age of 11 while she's living with her father and his family under this strict roof and become pregnant. But that's what happened. And this is where a lot of questions arise, mainly who is the father? When the family found out about this, they claimed that they did everything that they possibly could to find out who the father of Celina's child was, but she always would say that it was a 16-year-old boy who was not a member of the church and that she met at a skating rink in Camden, New Jersey, which I looked on Google Map and it's about a 30-minute drive away from where she was living, but she never provided any information other than that. Based on reports from those who knew Celina at this time and saw what was happening, despite her young age, she was very, I don't want to say mature because that can make it sound like I'm going somewhere that I'm not, and that's not it. But she was responsible once she learned that she was pregnant in terms of making sure that she attended her obstetrician appointments. She was taking prenatal vitamins. This just makes me sick to even think about because it's like this poor child, like I know at that time as an adult, well, even when I had my first child, as a 19-year-old, it's such a scary time. And to do that and go to those appointments, and I can't imagine an 11-year-old experiencing that. According to her obstetrician, she asked Celina, obviously, who the father of her child was, and she said that Celina wouldn't divulge the information. What's so infuriating about this situation is not only did this poor child who was and impregnated have to go through this pregnancy, she's also protecting the person that did this to her. Whilst protecting this person, she subjected herself to a lot of public shunning and scolding within the church. Her aunt was vile to her about her when she spoke about her in congregation. And it just boils my blood because it's like somebody violated your niece, like stole her innocence, is so terrified of what would happen to her, protecting them, that she isn't divulging this information to even her doctor. So let's go to Sunday, December 15th, 1996, the alleged last day that anybody in Celina's family saw her. So that morning, Celina and her family went to Sunday church services. They did this obviously every Sunday, and usually they would attend the morning services and then go back for the evening services. But this particular Sunday, the evening service was canceled with no explanation. According to the family, after the morning services, they just went home later on. Instead of going to the evening service, they had dinner, had ice cream for dessert. After ice cream, Celina excuses herself, kisses everybody goodnight, and says something along the lines of, "Thank you for everything." And then she goes upstairs and they assumed she went to bed. This was the last time Celina's father's side of her family said that they ever saw Celina. According to Celina's half-sister Nori, who was only 4 at the time, the next morning, so early Monday morning, December 16th, Celina's stepmother Yvette was making breakfast, and she told 4-year-old Nori to go upstairs and let Celina know that breakfast is ready. Nori says she remembers going up to Celina's room, opening up her door, and just relaying the message, just kind of calling into the room saying, "It's time for breakfast," and then just turned around and went straight downstairs. So after a few minutes, Celina still hadn't come down, and Yvette said, "Can you please go up again and ask your sister to come down?" So this time she does it again, opens up the door, calls for Celina, and there's no answer. So she decides to walk over to her bed, and she pulls back the covers and says that she remembers seeing like pillows that were, made to look like a body that was covered, and no Celina in the room. So she goes down and tells her mother that she's not in the room. Yvette calls her husband CJ, who's at the church, and asks if Celina is there because she's not in her room, and he says no. Despite a pregnant 12-year-old missing and having bodies or pillows, not bodies, that would be alarming, pillows disguised as a body in her bed, allegedly. It's not until Tuesday, December 17th, that CJ decides to go to the police station to report Celina missing. And there were a couple things about this that stood out to the officer who took his report. And one was that he thought it was odd that CJ took extra precious time to come to the station in person. Generally, parents of missing children are very frantic, and they immediately call the police to get the quickest response time and contact with them as possible. And then the other thing that rubbed him the wrong way, concerned him, was a statement that CJ made, which was that Celina's disappearance was in God's hands now. And yeah, those two things are very concerning, but you're probably wondering, Sherrilyn, what did they think about the fact that she was 12 years old and due to deliver a baby in 2 weeks? I don't have an answer for you, because CJ failed to report that his missing daughter was 9 months pregnant. His missing 12-year-old daughter was 9 months pregnant, and did not divulge that information until days after he went to the police station. After he leaves this first time, there is an immediate search that begins for Celina, and that sounds by other people that were within the community to have been primarily the police really spearheading it. Even Nori, who was young based on what she can remember from a really young age, she doesn't remember anybody ever really talking about Celina. And you'd think with a tight-knit congregation with members so close, living on church grounds, you would just be like, hey, all hands on deck. We are finding not only our own, but the niece of our reverend, who is a baby, about to have a baby. But nobody seemed to do anything or mention her disappearance at all. There allegedly was even opportunities for media to come and speak to the family, but Sarita denied them access. And life kind of seemed like it just went on without anybody caring. And when Nori was 8 years old, she said that she was curious about her sister and thought about her a lot and had questions. And Every time she asked questions, she never really got answers. Really, the way that her sister was painted to her was that she was a young girl that slept around, got pregnant, and ran away. And that is the reason that has been given for 28 years. Throughout those years, there have definitely been a lot of assumptions and whisperings behind closed doors of the church with past and present members that I personally, in my opinion, believe hold a lot of information. And some of those stories actually come from a young girl that Celina had allegedly become quite close with. This was a girl that lived in the house, and her name was Tawana, or is Tawana, and she is a few years older than Celina. She is the daughter of a church member. This church member was going through a very difficult time in her life and had confided in Sarita about like the things that were going on, and Sarita had offered to take Tawana in and care for her while she was going through what she was going through. So because of their close age and the fact that they got along, Tawana and Celina were typically always placed in the same groups together for activities, study groups, whatever it may be. They would even do a lot of fundraising for the church. Oh my gosh, learning about some of these fundraisers, I wanted to, I don't know, I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or scream or what, but a lot of it was like selling baked goods. And then I found out they were also selling Mary Kay products, and I was just like having a mental image of these poor young kids just out there slinging MLM products from Mary Kay to financially support the church. And it's not, from my understanding, like they were just kind of going, door to door for an hour out of their day. It's been alleged that when you were out volunteering your time to do fundraising for the church, no matter what your age is, like you were out from 8 a.m. sometimes till 1 in the morning going looking for sales, asking for 10% of people's income, which we know is not like an uncommon practice in churches. I've heard that when it came to this church specifically, and I think of like Twin Flames too, which is one that we've dived deep in where they've asked for a lot. It's basically said that, okay, yeah, like your 10% is like the minimum, but do you want to be the minimum? They've said that your donation and giving money to the church is like a moral responsibility. So like at what scale is your morality? Like what do you want to prove to us? And a lot of people donated their life savings. So it sounds like Tawana had kind of become like an older sister figure to Celina. She was one of the first to know when Celina had started her menstrual cycle, and she would look out for her and ask, if she was all stocked up on her hygiene products. And in May of 1996, Tawana had asked her if she needed any products, and Celina said no. So she didn't really think much of it, just figured she still had some. And then sometime later, she asked again, and Celina still didn't need any, and came out with the fact that she thought there was a chance that she could be pregnant. Now, the difference between this revelation between Celina and Tawana and Celina and her obstetrician or anybody else any other adult in Celina's life is that Tawana alleges that she followed up this with a confession that her 21-year-old cousin, Sarita's son, Sean Smith, was the one that got her pregnant. The following here is very hard to even say without making me feel physically ill and a lot of rage. So I'm sure it will be very similar for you to hear. So just disclaimer, it's alleged that Sean was a self-proclaimed music producer and told Celina that he could get autograph tickets from her favorite artist, which she very much wanted. But in order for him to get them for her, she would have to perform different you-know-what acts with him, which is so effing disgusting. If that's true, this is what Tawana alleges Celina told her. Tawana also says that when she heard this, she was not surprised. Sad for her friend, yes, but not surprised, because she also claimed to have been sexually assaulted by Sean starting when she was 13 years old, and that he had even paid for her to get an abortion because she got pregnant. Tawana's story has been consistent. She goes into a lot of detail about her assaults, from him coming into her room at night, assaulting her, and when Celina was sharing her experience with Tawana, it is alleged that it was the same, that was also what was happening after everybody was going to bed. Like a lot of young girls that find themselves in situations like this, Tawana didn't say anything. She was very afraid of speaking up about it for a number of reasons. She didn't want to be shamed in front of the church, even though he's a predator, but because she was very aware, even at a young age, that this was Sarita's son. So Celina had kept on this information for quite some time, and it wasn't until she was noticeably showing and having a growing belly that her family asked her to take a pregnancy test, and she did. It came up that she was pregnant. So this, I guess I'm trying to make sense of the situation of like finding this out and why she was in the situation she was at 12 years old, still pregnant. I believe that it was past the point of terminating the pregnancy. It's been alleged. I know I've said this a lot, but you gotta, especially when right now I actually have close connections with creators who have become my friends who are getting sued left, right, and center, it feels like, or getting tried to be getting sued. So protective language, big fan of it over here. And I also just think that that's, the moral thing to do also if we don't know for sure. But anyways, I'm sure that do not play a game where I say alleged and like take a shot, because I think that'll be really dangerous. Let's toss another one in there though. So it's been alleged that Celina did tell her family that it was Sean who assaulted her when she was kind of like pressured to say, who this was. And apparently he was asked about it and had denied it. I mean, what do you expect, really? Who wants to distance themselves from a claim like that, and how sick it is, but for other reasons, I'm sure. One of them being Sean was married. He is also the father of multiple children to other women. Two of those women were in the church, also his wife who was in the church. And then there allegedly is another unidentified person who was impregnated by him that was also living in this family home. The way I understood it is his denial was just taken as fact, and Celina was unsupported by her family, thrown into this situation where she's 12 years old, having to grow up immediately, take herself to doctor's appointments, taking her little prenatal vitamin. She was choosing baby names. Like, it just breaks my heart. And then something, I think it was on Jaden Harlow's podcast, was hearing that as her stomach grew, her family refused to even buy maternity clothes or even bigger clothes that fit her. Oh my gosh, like, just disgusting. So upsetting. I don't even have the word in my vocabulary for the rage, sickness, pain, sadness, anger that I feel when it comes to this case. Based on accounts from past members or people who had, some form of connection to this family and was like hearing rumors, the family pushed the narrative that Celina ran off on her own when she went missing. They said they knew who the father was and that it was a 16-year-old boy in Camden that she had met at this ice rink. I think that we need to remember, though, that she was never allowed to interact with anybody outside the church, but they believed that she had run off with this 16-year-old. Something important to know about Celina's pregnancy and upcoming delivery is that her pelvis was too narrow, and she was going to require to have a C-section. So you'd assume if she had run off on her own or with this 16-year-old father, for listeners, I'm air quoting really heavily right here. You'd assume that she wouldn't have been able to stay under the radar very long because she's 9 months pregnant. She's due in 2 weeks, and she would have needed a hospital to perform this C-section on her. On top of that, it didn't make sense because in her room, basically everything was still there. She had a purse, a CD player that she constantly was listening to, her prenatal vitamins. Everything is left behind. The only thing that her family said they could tell was missing and that she would have taken was this long red coat that she had. And I think it's not even a matter of opinion to say that basically nothing was done to even find out if that narrative of this 16-year-old is true. Like, there was no concern for her safety whatsoever, starting with the fact that her father didn't even report her missing until the day after her alleged disappearance. He also wasted even more time by physically going to the police station and then withheld, in my opinion, the most crucial part of all of this was the fact that she was pregnant and that this is all in God's hands, If you had no idea what was going on here, you have a 12-year-old daughter who is pregnant, due any day, and you wait days to share that tidbit. It makes no sense. That is a huge motive. We know from looking at so many cases that pregnant women are extremely high risk for being murdered or going missing, and a high percentage of those cases, it's the father of that child that is involved. So now you've got an added element to this case, the fact that she's a child, having a child. So if the family knew that there was some 16-year-old in Camden that she could potentially be with, why wouldn't you immediately share that information in that first meeting? Let's mention the meeting the day after she allegedly disappeared, with detectives to, hand them the first lead. Go find this person. I personally think that is a benefit to this case. I know that sounds so freaking weird to say, but she's at even higher risk. It's not just like a 12-year-old missing case. Like, there are a lot now of elements here that would make law enforcement want to act fast, not because she's in danger if she were going to go into labor earlier and needing a hospital for her C-section, but law enforcement would definitely want to know, okay, we need to find this girl because we need to know who got her pregnant. Unfortunately, by the time that they had found all of this out, they had done what they could with the investigation. There was search, there was news coverage involving like the community and the police side of things, but it turned out nothing came about any of it. Hospitals were even checked to see if anybody fitting Celina's description had been admitted. And again, there was nothing that came up. I feel like that would have definitely been, you couldn't kind of scoot under the radar being a child, having a child. That would have been something that a lot of people would remember. I guess at one point, CJ was looked at as potentially being the father of his daughter's child, but was able to prove that he had a vasectomy several years prior, and then his doctor was able to prove that it had not been reversed, or that, it didn't work or whatever. Like, he had a vasectomy and it was still a functioning vasectomy, I guess. That sounds so weird. Police also did look into the claims that Tawana had shared, that Celina said Sean was the father of this child. He was questioned. He again told police that he did not have anything to do with Celina's disappearance. and had not assaulted her. And this is something that Celina's father, CJ, had backed up, telling the investigators that he didn't believe that Sean had any involvement. And he also strongly pushed this narrative with investigators about her just running off because she was scared that the father was going to get in trouble, this young person. I was trying to think about what I would do and say or how I would act if I was a member of this church. I would love to speak with somebody who was actively involved in this time and is no longer involved, because it's so hard to try to make sense of something like this. And I don't know, you can only I guess you could only really react based on the information that you're providing, and you're seeing your leaders, like these people, this family that you look up to and respect so much, not care, what that would do to you. Because there was a point in the Missing Found podcast where there was mention of what Sarita had shared in church about trying to find Celina when it came up, and that not only was it just like brushed aside, but she made statements like 12 years old is just a number, like to not get caught up in the age, and that some 12-year-olds make you think that they're older. You know, some 12-year-olds kind of present themselves as 18-year-olds. And she painted Celina as this deceitful, sinning, lying child who lied about her, not even child, lying like mature child who had lied about her pregnancy and gotten herself into this situation, and said that generation, like Celina's generation, they're evil. It just makes me sick to think about that. And I just kept thinking about what I would have felt like sitting in the church hearing this reverend, who is the aunt of this 12-year-old girl who was raped and impregnated, leading the church, saying this. Like, why? Why would you do this? And the only thing that I can come up with, in my opinion, is to protect somebody that is closer to you than your own niece, which would be maybe your son. I don't know, allegedly. It's also important to mention that, yes, he did deny the allegations that he raped his own cousin, but Celina and Tawana's claims against him are not the only ones. On January 29th, 1998, when Sean was 23 years old, he was arrested on sexual assault charges. He had sexually assaulted 2 girls for several years, and this started when they were ages 13 and 14. One of the victims said that she was assaulted from 1992 to 1994, and the other said she was assaulted from 1993 to 1995. In the middle of all of this, he also fathered 5 children by 4 different mothers. And from what I know, though the ages of those mothers had not been released, whether they're underage or not, I don't think there's anywhere public that is confirmed. Obviously, with so much time passing and just the situation itself at hand, and how I want to say like complex, just to use like a more easier word, because I'm just like the fuckery of the whole thing. There have been a number of theories, anywhere from saying that yes, maybe she actually did run off with this 16-year-old boyfriend of hers. I go back to the fact that I don't think that is likely at all, because she wasn't able to do anything with, outside of the church. She was always monitored. She was controlled as to who she could socialize with. She was basically at home, at the church, still at the church for homeschool, and then back at home. So when would she have had a moment to have this happen to her? Another theory, this one is more pushed by CJ's family, is that if she didn't run off with the 16-year-old, then she ran off on her own, and it was to prevent getting a blood test taken to reveal who the father was. And they say this because CJ said to law enforcement that he might have scared Celina by telling her once the baby's born, he's going to get a blood test to find out who the father of the child was. And with Celina only being 12 years old, it's not unreasonable to assume that she might have believed that that is possible, even though you wouldn't have been able to know who the father is just with a blood test from the baby. You would also need to compare it with the blood of the father. But he had insinuated that you just take the blood from the baby and that's going to tell us everything that we know, and that she didn't want that to happen and this person not to get in trouble, so she ran away. There's also the theory that she ran away just because she wanted to run away, that she had been through hell and back already, losing her mother, being ripped away from her mother's side of the family that she had known so well, then thrown into this extremist lifestyle of control and isolation. I mean, I personally I would hope for that, but in the same breath, you think about that moment wouldn't have made sense. She's due any day, knowing that she needs a C-section to deliver her baby. She's 12 years old, and that time is so terrifying. So even if you have adults in your life that are not the best at that age, with this being your first time and being so scared, you would lean on the people in your life for comfort and guidance, at least until the baby was born, is what my thought process was. And then you further go with, if that was, and that she did hide out somewhere, she would have been found long ago, because she basically only had like 2 weeks until she was going to have this baby. And then there would have been hospital records, which we know there aren't. Not to mention the fact that we have to remember there were 16 people or something like that living in this 4-bedroom house. She would have had to sneak out around them, go undetected. Outside, it was freezing. And from what we know, there was no, what was the plan? She didn't even bring anything of comfort to her, not even her prenatal vitamins, which I saw reoccurring in different readings of this case, different podcasts, different episodes that were done on this. Like, everybody mentions and it breaks my heart, like the prenatal vitamins, and those stayed. What I think is super sketchy is there's really no way of even knowing if it was the evening of December 15th that Celina had even disappeared, because the evening church, what do you call it? Why am I going blank? The evening church service. There we go, Sherrilyn. It was canceled, and no one knew why. There was never like an explanation that was given, which I don't know, could mean something. Maybe something happened very earlier on in the day, right after they got back from church. I don't know. What I do know is, if it does have something to do with it, or just everything in general here, it leads you to like the most probable theory that somebody close to her was most likely the one who was responsible for actual harm being done to Celina. And when you ask yourself who would want to do that, makes sense that it would be somebody who would want to conceal a secret, and or people who want to help that person conceal a secret. As hard as it is to go there and think that people could do that. Even though it's hard to think that, the fact of the matter is Celina was living in a house where a predator lived, Sean Smith. This, I do not have to say alleged here. He was arrested for sexual assault of 2 teen girls who he started assaulting when they were 13 and 14 years old. Those are facts, babe. As of today, Sean has not been charged with any crime associated to Celina. CJ's side of the family believe that Lynn's relatives, so Celina's mother's relatives, maybe came to get her and had put her in hiding. Lynn's relatives strongly deny this and say absolutely not. Look at the church and the Smith-Mays family. And even Nori, Celina's half-sister, she acknowledges that she doesn't even know what she remembers. She knows that she was only 4 years old when this occurred. So accounts from her memory could have been fed to her from that first day. Like, oh, don't you remember going and checking on her? Or maybe she did go and check on her, but there was things that were happening behind the scenes. Now, the really, really, really frustrating part about all of this is 3 of the main people in this case who I believe would have answers are no longer alive. Celina's father, CJ, Sarita, her aunt, and Sean are all dead. And the church that they all ran is now not a thing. So to, I guess, easily find and locate all of those members would be a very hard task. That's why it's like, if this ever were to come across somebody who was around at that time, like oh my gosh, I have so many questions. Allegedly, the building is still there, which is tragic because it's like, you know, the phrase, if walls could talk. I believe that those walls absolutely, they know what the heck happened. What's so sad in all of this is Celina would be 40 this year and her child would be 28, this year being 2024, if you are watching this in the future. And that is so, I don't know, just devastating. I hold on to hope. You know what I've got to say about that is I'm glad that I still hold on hope. After this being my full-time job, talking with so many family members, it's very heavy, but I'm thankful that I haven't like lost the ability to still be me and be hopeful and try to be positive, and I don't know. And then that's a really depressing thought also, because a lot of these situations is beyond hope, but I am hopeful. I try to picture just Celina at peace with her child wherever she is. It was like such a young age for her that she would have had to endure so much trauma in her life, more than some people ever go through in their entire lives. And so I don't know if it was for the sake of just me getting through learning this case or not, or I don't know what, but I was just constantly just bringing myself to picturing her just like getting away and living, a beautiful life. If you have any information or leads or are associated in any way to the disappearance of Celina Mays and potentially what her current whereabouts are, please contact the Willingboro Police Department at 609-877-2253. You can also locate your local FBI office, which will be linked in the description of this video for anybody who's listening and hasn't had the chance to see a photo of Celina. I mean, we would be talking about 40 years old, but at the time of her disappearance, she was 5 feet 0 inches tall, weighed 120 pounds. She is biracial, African American, and Caucasian female with brown eyes and long brown curly hair. Like I said, my hopes are that it's Celina that comes, across an episode about her and calls and says, I'm good. And I don't want anybody to know where I am, but like just say that I'm good. That's what we're going to roll with. But if there is a person or people responsible for something sinister happening to her, then my hope for you is that the fiery pits of hell are awaiting you. Dark, I know, but it's how I feel. So have fun with that. All right. That's it for me today. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly until then. Make sure to love each other, love yourself. Another shout out to Trade Coffee. Thank you again so much, Trade Coffee, for sponsoring today's video. I will have the link to that as well in the description. I will see you in the next video. Did I already say this? I will miss you. Make sure to love each other, love yourself. I gotta go. I will see you soon.